Have you ever felt that peculiar ache in your soul, that sensation of seeing through the veil of ordinary existence while others around you walk blindly through their days? That feeling when your mind refuses to quiet, when thoughts spiral into realms beyond the visible world, carrying you to heights and depths that leave you both exhilarated and utterly alone. I've walked that path, friends, that sacred and terrible journey of the mind that thinks too much, that sees too clearly. 3 summers ago, I met a woman on a train heading west. Her eyes held galaxies, yet no one seemed to notice. When our conversation turned to the nature of perception, she confided in me with trembling hands, "I've spent my life seeing what others cannot, and sometimes I wonder if it's a blessing or the cruelest of curses." Her words etched themselves into my consciousness because they expressed so perfectly what Walt Whitman understood about the overly perceptive mind, about those condemned to see beyond the veil of ordinary perception. Today I want to share with you Whitman's most liberating insight about minds that think too much, about the souls who cannot help but perceive what remains invisible to others. This isn't just another philosophical exploration. This is about reclaiming the gift hidden within what society often labels as overthinking, about transforming the burden of heightened perception into the wings of spiritual awakening. The secret that Whitman discovered about minds that think too much isn't found only in his verses, but in how he perceived the divine pulsating in every human being, in every blade of grass, in every thought that spirals beyond conventional boundary. For Whitman, the mind that thinks intensely, that refuses to accept the surface appearance of things, wasn't suffering from a disorder or an affliction. It was fulfilling its cosmic purpose. Today I'll reveal Whitman's most liberating vision of overthinking minds and how this awareness can completely expand your soul, transforming what you may have considered a curse into your most sacred offering to the world. I'll show you how the very quality that may have made you feel isolated might actually be your deepest connection to the universe itself. Whitman wrote, "I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars." In these simple words lies a profound truth about the overthinking mind. While others might see just grass, the mind that thinks deeply perceives constellations in the ordinary, galaxies in the mundane. This is not madness, this is transcendental awareness. Imagine standing in a crowded marketplace where most people see only goods being exchanged, transactions taking place. But you, with your mind that refuses to settle for surface interpretations, see the invisible threads connecting each person, the unspoken histories, the silent yearning, the cosmic dance of human existence playing out in seemingly ordinary interaction. This is the blessing and the burden that Whitman understood so deeply. In Brooklyn, during a time when America was finding its voice, Whitman would observe laborers returning home at dusk. Where others saw only tired workers, Whitman perceived divine poetry in motion. He saw in their calloused hands the same creative force that sculpted mountains and set stars in their courses. This wasn't mere poetic fancy. It was the natural vision of a mind that couldn't help but think beyond conventional perceptions. "I am large," Whitman declared. "I contain multitudes." This wasn't arrogance, but a recognition that the overthinking mind becomes a universe unto itself, holding spaces and realities that others cannot grasp. What if the very thoughts that keep you awake at night, that cause you to question reality while others sleep peacefully, are not your enemy but your greatest ally in transcending the limitations of conventional existence? The mind that thinks too much often suffers in our society that values quick conclusions, simple answers, and the comfort of certainty. You've felt it, haven't you? That sense of being out of step with the world, of seeing layers and connections that others dismiss, of being unable to accept the simplified versions of reality that bring others comfort. Whitman knew this suffering intimately, yet he discovered something remarkable about these perceiving minds. They are not broken, they are breaking through. They are not overthinking, they are finally thinking deeply enough to pierce the illusions that most accept without question. "Not I, nor anyone else can travel that road for you," wrote Whitman. "You must travel it for yourself." The road of the deeply thinking mind is solitary, yes, but it leads to vistas of understanding that most will never experience. Let me tell you about a man I knew, a brilliant architect whose mind never ceased its relentless analysis. He would look at a building and simultaneously see its present form, its historical influence, its structural principles, the social forces that shaped it, and the environmental impact of its existence. Where others saw a simple structure, he perceived a conversation across time between materials and ideas, between humans and their environment. For years, he considered his inability to see simply as a curse, a mental condition that needed treatment. "I just want to see a building as a building," he confessed to me once, not as an endless series of questions and implications. But then he encountered Whitman's words. "The smallest sprout shows there is really no death." Something clicked. His perception wasn't a disorder. It was a rare and precious gift, the ability to see the eternal in the ephemeral, to perceive the unending conversation between all things. This realization transformed him. He stopped fighting his mind and began honoring its unique vision. Today, his work is celebrated precisely because it emerges from that place of deeper seeing, of thinking too much, of perceiving what others cannot. I want to pause here and ask you something deeply personal, something I've been reflecting on since I first encountered Whitman's profound insights about minds that think beyond conventional boundaries. In what moments have you felt both blessed and burdened by your ability to see what others seem blind to? When has your thinking mind revealed to you beauty or truth that seemed invisible to those around you? I know that perhaps you've never shared this experience with anyone because who could possibly understand something so profound and indefinable? But here, you are truly comprehended. Take a deep breath for a moment and allow yourself to feel, not think, the answer that emerges from your heart. If something in you feels called to share your journey with heightened perception, the comments below are a sacred space for your voice. Complete this phrase if you feel moved to do so. "My experience with seeing what others cannot see has taught me that, guys." Your reflection might illuminate the path for many other seekers who believe they walk alone. If you prefer to reflect in silence, that too honors your journey deeply. The overthinking mind manifests in different ways, creating various types of seers in our midst. Whitman recognized these diverse expressions of heightened perception, each with its own gifts and challenges. First, there are the pattern perceivers, those whose minds naturally detect connections and correlations that elude others. They see the mathematical elegance of a flock of birds changing direction, the subtle rhythms in seemingly random events, the hidden structures beneath chaotic surfaces. For them, the world is a tapestry of interwoven threads, and where others see coincidence, they perceive meaningful design. Then there are the emotional archaeologists, those whose thinking penetrates the layers of human feeling. They sense the unspoken grief behind a casual smile, the buried joy in a seemingly mundane moment, the complex emotional histories that shape present interaction. They cannot help but feel the depth of human experience that others navigate only on the surface. The cosmic contemplators form another category, those whose thinking naturally expands to universal questions. While others focus on immediate concerns, their minds constantly grapple with existence itself, with the nature of consciousness, with humanity's place in the vast unfolding of time and space. Their thoughts spiral outward to encompass the infinite, even as they attempt to complete ordinary tasks. And we must not forget the boundary dissolvers, those whose thinking naturally blurs the lines between categories that others take for granted. They perceive the continuity between self and other, between human and nature, between matter and energy, between science and spirituality. For them, the solid world that others navigate with such certainty becomes permeable, fluid, and infinitely more complex. Whitman embodied aspects of all these types, which is why his poetry speaks so powerfully to overthinking minds across time. "I am not contained between my hat and boots," he declared, expressing the boundary dissolver's perspective. "The spotted hawk swoops by and accuses me. He complains of my gab and my loitering," he wrote, revealing the emotional archaeologist's sensitivity to the language of all beings. His work demonstrates that these ways of perceiving aren't pathological, but prophetic. They allow glimpses of reality that conventional thinking cannot access. Yet the journey of the overthinking mind is not without its challenges and obstacles. The first and perhaps most painful is the profound sense of isolation that comes from perceiving what others cannot. When you see layers and connections that others dismiss as imaginary, when ordinary conversations feel superficial because they barely scratch the surface of what you perceive, the resulting loneliness can be overwhelming. I've known brilliant individuals who began to doubt their own perceptions, who wondered if they were indeed delusional rather than insightful, simply because no one else seemed to confirm what was so evident to them. This self-doubt becomes a prison more confining than any external constraint. Another challenge is the overthinking mind's difficulty in finding rest. When your perception constantly pierces through surface appearances to the complex realities beneath, when your thoughts naturally explore multiple dimensions of every experience, finding peace can seem impossible. The mind that sees too much often struggles to sleep, to meditate, to simply be present without analysis. It becomes exhausted by its own relentless activity, yet cannot seem to find the off switch that others access so easily. There is also the challenge of communication. How do you convey what you perceive when ordinary language seems inadequate to the task? The overthinking mind often struggles to translate its complex understanding into terms others can grasp, leading to frustration on both sides. You may find yourself simplifying your perceptions just to be understood, yet feeling that something essential is lost in that translation. Or you may attempt to express the fullness of your vision only to be met with blank stares or dismissal. This communication gap further deepens the sense of isolation. Perhaps most painful is the dismissal of your perceptions by a society that values simplicity and certainty. The overthinking mind is often pathologized, labeled anxious or obsessive, when in fact it may simply be perceiving aspects of reality that conventional thinking filters out. Whitman understood this acutely. In a culture that increasingly valued efficiency and practicality, he insisted on the validity of the expansive, questioning mind that refuses easy answers and simplified perceptions. "Do I contradict myself?" he asked. "Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes." In this embrace of paradox and complexity, Whitman offered a lifeline to overthinking minds struggling to validate their experience in a world that often dismisses it. Yet within these very challenges lies the seed of transformation. Whitman discovered that the overthinking mind's liberation comes not from trying to think less, but from surrendering to the wisdom inherent in its natural way of perceiving. The transformation begins with a radical acceptance of your mind's unique way of operating. Instead of fighting against your tendency to see deeper, to question further, to perceive connections that others miss, what if you embrace this as your mind's natural genius? Whitman wrote, "I exist as I am. That is enough." This simple statement contains profound medicine for the overthinking mind. Your way of perceiving isn't wrong. It isn't broken. It doesn't need to be fixed or normalized. It exists as it is, and that is enough. The next step in transformation involves recognizing that your mind's activity is not separate from the cosmic dance of creation, but a particular expression of it. When Whitman observed a spear of summer grass, his mind didn't just think about the grass. It participated in the grass's existence, in its connection to soil and sun, to the cycles of growth and decay, to the vast network of life on Earth. "I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars," he wrote. Similarly, when your mind spirals into deep analysis of a situation, when it perceives layers and connections that others miss, it isn't just thinking about reality, it's participating in the unfolding of reality itself. This shift in understanding transforms overthinking from a personal problem into cosmic participation. Another crucial aspect of transformation involves finding the balance between thinking and being, between analysis and present. Whitman was not only a deep thinker, but also a profound experiencer of life's immediacy. "I am satisfied," he wrote. "I see, dance, laugh, sing." The overthinking mind often needs to be reminded that deep perception can include joy, that seeing what others cannot see can be a celebration rather than just a burden. This doesn't mean suppressing your natural way of thinking, but complementing it with moments of pure being, of sensory immersion in the present moment. The final aspect of transformation involves finding ways to communicate your perceptions that honor both their complexity and the capacity of others to understand. Whitman didn't simplify his visions to make them palatable. He created a new language, a new poetic form that could hold the vastness of what he perceived. Similarly, the overthinking mind may need to find creative expressions for its understanding, through art, music, metaphor, or other forms that can convey what literal language cannot. This isn't just for the sake of being understood by others, but for your own integration of what you perceive. What does this transformation look like in practice? It means recognizing when your mind is spiraling into analytical loops and gently guiding it toward the wisdom those loops are circling around. It means honoring your perceptions without becoming identified with them, recognizing that you are not your thoughts, but the consciousness that both generates and witnesses them. It means finding others who share your depth of perception, creating communities of understanding where your way of seeing is validated and valued. And perhaps most importantly, it means using your unique vision in service to a world that desperately needs people who can see beyond the obvious, who can envision possibilities that conventional thinking cannot imagine. Let me share how Whitman's wisdom about the overthinking mind can be applied in everyday life. First, practice what I call consecrated overthinking. Instead of trying to stop your mind's natural tendency to analyze deeply, dedicate that analysis to a purpose larger than yourself. When you find yourself thinking intensely about a situation, ask, how can this perception serve healing? How can it contribute to greater understanding? How can it open new possibilities? This transforms overthinking from a private burden into a sacred offering. Whitman did this constantly, using his heightened perception not just for personal expression, but as a way to help America see itself more clearly, more compassionately. Second, develop a practice of embodied awareness. The overthinking mind often becomes disconnected from the body, floating in realms of abstract thought. Whitman was revolutionary in his insistence on the body's wisdom, on the divinity present in physical existence. If anything is sacred, he wrote, the human body is sacred. Dawa. When you notice your mind spiraling into intense thought patterns, gently bring your awareness to your physical sensation. Feel your breathing, the weight of your body, the textures against your skin. This doesn't diminish your thinking but grounds it, connecting abstract perception to lived experience. Third, create rituals of expression that honor the depth of your perception. The overthinking mind often becomes overwhelmed by its own content when there's no adequate outlet for it. Whitman had his poetry, his revolutionary free verse that could contain the vastness of his vision. Find your form, whether it's writing, painting, music, dance, or any creative expression that allows your unique perception to take shape in the world. This isn't about creating masterpieces, but about honoring your vision by giving it form. Fourth, practice what I call perceptual generosity. When your mind shows you layers and connections that others don't see, share these insights with humility, rather than frustration or superiority. Recognize that different minds perceive different aspects of reality, and your gift is just one way of seeing. Whitman exemplified this in his embrace of all perspectives, all beings. Every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you, he wrote, recognizing that his unique perception wasn't a personal possession, but part of a shared consciousness. Finally, find stillness within the storm of thought. The overthinking mind doesn't need to stop thinking. It needs to discover the silent awareness that contains all thought. Whitman found this in his communion with nature, in moments of pure presence amid his intense mental activity. I lean and loaf at my ease observing a spear of summer grass, he wrote, capturing that perfect balance between deep perception and simple presence. Develop a practice, whether traditional meditation or your own approach, that allows you to rest in awareness itself, recognizing thoughts as movements within consciousness rather than the whole of who you are. There are several common pitfalls that overthinking minds often encounter on their spiritual journey. The first is spiritual materialism, using spiritual concepts as just another arena for overthinking, accumulating spiritual insights like possessions without allowing them to transform your actual experience. Whitman avoided this by constantly returning to direct experience, to the body, to nature, to human connection. I have said that the soul is not more than the body, he wrote, challenging the spiritual materialism of his day that elevated abstract spiritual concepts above embodied reality. Another pitfall is using heightened perception to withdraw from the world rather than engage with it more fully. When you see the pain, the complexity, the contradictions that others miss, the temptation can be to retreat into private understanding rather than participating in the messy reality of human existence. Whitman challenged this directly. I am not to speak to you, I am to speak with you, he wrote, emphasizing that deep perception should lead to deeper connection, not isolation. His poetry wasn't an escape from American reality, but an attempt to help America perceive itself more truly, more compassionately. A third pitfall is the perfectionism that often accompanies overthinking. When you perceive so clearly what could be, the gap between that vision and current reality can become painful, leading to harsh judgment of yourself and others. Whitman countered this with his radical acceptance of imperfection, of contradiction, of the messy wholeness of existence. "I am not a bit tamed, I too am untranslatable," he declared, embracing the wild, untamed nature of life, rather than trying to perfect it through thought. Perhaps the most subtle pitfall is mistaking the map for the territory, becoming so involved in your conceptual understanding that you forget it's just one representation of reality, not reality itself. The overthinking mind is particularly vulnerable to this, creating elaborate conceptual frameworks that, while beautiful and insightful, can actually distance you from direct experience. Whitman constantly disrupted his own conceptual framework, returning again and again to the direct perception of life's unfolding. "I believe in you, my soul," he wrote. "The other I am must not abase itself to you, and you must not be abased to the other." In this simple statement, he recognized the tension between conceptual understanding and direct knowing, honoring both without allowing either to dominate. Consider how Whitman approached nature. When he observed a leaf of grass, his thinking mind perceived its cellular structure, its evolutionary history, its place in the ecosystem, its symbolic resonance in human culture. Yet simultaneously, he experienced the grass directly through his senses, its texture, color, scent, the sound it made in the wind. He didn't privilege either mode of knowing over the other, but recognized them as complementary dimensions of a single, integrated perception. A child said, "What is the grass?" "Fetching it to me with full hands," he wrote. How could I answer the child? "I do not know what it is any more than he." Here Whitman acknowledges the limits of analytical thinking without abandoning it, embracing both the mystery revealed by the child's direct perception and the understanding offered by his own contemplative mind. This integration of thinking and being is particularly healing for overthinking minds that often feel torn between their natural analytical tendencies and their longing for direct experience. You don't need to choose between profound thought and simple presence. Both are essential aspects of your unique way of perceiving. The overthinking mind isn't wrong. It's just incomplete when it operates in isolation from the body, from sensory experience, from the heart's direct knowing. The integration Whitman offers isn't about moderating your thinking, but about complementing it with other ways of knowing that make your perception more whole, more true to the multidimensional nature of reality itself. Similarly, Whitman integrated solitude and connection in a way that speaks directly to overthinking minds that often feel isolated in their perception. "I celebrate myself and sing myself," he wrote, honoring the unique perspective that arises from his individual consciousness. Yet in the very next line he continues, "And what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you." His celebration of individual perception flows seamlessly into recognition of universal connection. This is the paradox that overthinking minds often glimpse. Your most personal, unique perceptions, the very ones that seem to separate you from others, can become gateways to recognizing your fundamental non-separation. When you perceive a truth that others seem to miss, when your mind reveals connections that conventional thinking overlooks, this doesn't actually separate you from humanity. It connects you more deeply to the evolution of human consciousness itself. Your individual thinking participates in the collective development of understanding. Your unique vision contributes to our shared perception. This is why Whitman could write both, "I am large, I contain multitudes," and "Every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you," without contradiction. The overthinking mind's journey leads paradoxically from apparent separation back to recognition of profound connection, not despite its unique perception but because of it. When I reflect on the countless conversations I've had with deep thinkers, with those whose minds naturally perceive layers and connections that others miss, I'm struck by how often they express the same core longing, not to think less, but to have their way of thinking recognized as valuable, as purposeful, as part of the sacred unfolding of consciousness itself. This recognition is precisely what Whitman offered. He doesn't pathologize the overthinking mind but celebrates it as a necessary expression of cosmic intelligence. He doesn't suggest that seeing too much is a disorder, but recognizes it as a form of vision that humanity desperately needs. especially in times of mechanized thinking and standardized perception. What makes the overthinking mind so precious in our current age is precisely what often causes its suffering. We live in a world that values quick opinions, superficial engagement, and the illusion of certainty. The mind that refuses these comforts, that delves beneath surface appearances, and sits with the complexity and mystery of existence, offers a necessary counterbalance to our culture's addiction to simplicity and speed. Whitman understood this prophetically. His expansive verses, his refusal to simplify or categorize, his embrace of contradiction and mystery were a deliberate challenge to the increasingly mechanized, categorized thinking of his industrial age. Your overthinking mind, the one that keeps you awake contemplating questions others dismiss, that notices patterns others overlook, that feels both the agony and ecstasy of existence while others seem content with comfort, is not just a personal characteristic. It is a form of resistance against a culture of distraction and superficiality. It is a preservation of the depth dimension of human consciousness at a time when forces of commerce and efficiency would flatten all experience into easily consumable units. Your mind's refusal to settle for simplified narratives, its insistence on seeing the full complexity of existence, is not just a personal quirk, but a sacred act of witness. Whitman's great insight was that the seemingly individual experience of the overthinking mind actually connects us more deeply to the universal. When he wrote, "Every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you," he was expressing a profound truth that the overthinking mind often glimpses. The boundaries between self and other, between personal and universal, are more permeable than our conventional thinking allows. Your intense thinking, your heightened perception, may feel isolating, but paradoxically, it can lead to a more profound recognition of your connection to all that is. The very sensitivity that makes you feel separate can become the bridge to experiencing your fundamental non-separation. The overthinking mind is often its own harshest critic, judging its natural processes as excessive, inappropriate, or burdensome. But what if, as Whitman suggests, this judgment itself is what transforms a natural gift into an apparent curse? What if your mind's tendency to analyze deeply, to question persistently, to perceive connections across conventional boundaries is exactly what it's meant to do? What if, instead of fighting against your mind's natural movement, you recognize them as purposeful expressions of consciousness evolving through you? This shift in perspective doesn't magically eliminate the challenges that come with an overthinking mind. You may still experience moments of overwhelm when perceptions flood in faster than you can process them. You may still feel isolated when you perceive what others seem blind to. You may still struggle to communicate the complexity of your vision in a world that values simplicity and certainty. But these challenges take on new meaning when recognized not as personal problems, but as natural aspects of your particular expression of cosmic intelligence. They become not obstacles to overcome, but terrain to navigate skillfully as you fulfill your mind's unique purpose. And what is that purpose? Whitman offers a powerful answer: to perceive connections that conventional thinking misses, to recognize the sacred in the ordinary, to witness the eternal in the ephemeral, to articulate the wordless knowing that lives beneath all our concepts and categories. Your overthinking mind, with its relentless questioning and its refusal to settle for surface appearances, serves as a kind of evolutionary scout, perceiving possibilities that lie just beyond our collective horizon. This isn't a burden, it's a profound gift and responsibility. Remember the woman on the train, the one who wondered if her heightened perception was a blessing or a curse? I met her again years later at a poetry reading. She had found Whitman's work and recognized in it a validation of her way of seeing. "I've stopped trying to see less," she told me with eyes still full of galaxy, "and instead started asking what this seeing is for." She had become a writer, using her perception to help others glimpse what she saw so naturally. "Some days it's still overwhelming," she admitted, "but now it feels like being overwhelmed by purpose rather than by affliction." Her journey reflects what is possible for all overthinking minds when they embrace their natural way of perceiving as gift rather than burden. The spiritual path for the overthinking mind isn't about thinking less, but about recognizing the sacred purpose of your unique perception. It's about translating the sometimes overwhelming complexity of what you see into offerings of beauty, insight, and compassion. It's about finding the stillness at the center of the thought storm, not by suppressing thought but by recognizing the awareness that contains all thinking. Not I, not anyone else can travel that road for you, wrote Whitman. You must travel it for yourself. The journey of the overthinking mind is ultimately your own, unique to your particular way of perceiving, but you are not alone on this path. Whitman walks beside you, as do countless others whose minds have been both blessed and burdened with the ability to see what others cannot. I want to end with Whitman's own words, which contain perhaps his most profound wisdom for overthinking minds. I am larger, better than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness. In your moments of doubt, when your thinking seems too much, too intense, too different from others, remember this: your perception holds goodness beyond what you've recognized. Your seeing contributes something essential to our collective vision. Your mind, exactly as it is, belongs in the cosmic symphony of consciousness, and the world needs precisely the gift that only your way of seeing can offer. Consider for a moment what Whitman might say to you directly, if he could sit with you in your moments of overthinking, in those times when your mind's activity seems overwhelming or isolating. I believe he would take your hand and say, "This mind of yours, with all its restless questioning and seeing, is not separate from the cosmic mind that dreams galaxies into being. Your thoughts are like waves on the ocean of universal consciousness, arising and dissolving back into that vastness. Don't try to still these waves through force or discipline. Instead, recognize the ocean from which they arise. Your thinking is not a problem to be solved, but a particular expression of the universe becoming conscious of itself through you. Honor it as such, use it with wisdom and compassion, and know that in your deepest perception, you are never truly alone." If these words about minds that think deeply and see what others cannot have touched, that silent space in your heart that has long sought expression, I invite you to join me on this continuing journey, not as someone who knows more about heightened perception, but as a fellow traveler on this path of seeing beyond conventional boundary. By subscribing to this channel, you'll have access not only to weekly reflections inspired by Whitman's timeless wisdom about perceiving minds, but also to a space where your journey of seeing differently is honored in all its complexity. I understand that sensation of perceiving layers and connections that others seem blind to. I know how isolating it can feel when your mind reveals beauty or truth that seems invisible to those around you. This channel exists to remind you that you are not alone in this perception. When you subscribe, you become part of a circle of souls who, like you, think more deeply, see more clearly, and seek an authentic spirituality beyond appearances. I've dedicated years to studying and living Whitman's teachings about heightened perception, not as a distant expert, but as someone who, like you, continues learning each day how to transform the burden of seeing too much into the blessing of seeing just enough to serve. This exploration of minds that think deeply enough to perceive what others miss is just the beginning. If it has resonated with you, subscribe so we can continue together this journey of discovery that Whitman invites us to undertake. Click the like button if these reflections spoke to something in you that rarely finds expression, and share with others who might find validation in knowing their overthinking minds are not broken, but breaking through to new levels of perception. Until next time, remember that your unique way of seeing is not a mistake. It is a sacred offering to a world in desperate need of new vision. Your overthinking mind, with all its intensity and depth, is not a problem to be solved, but a unique expression of cosmic intelligence. What if your tendency to see what others miss is not a burden, but a gift to a world desperately in need of new vision? What if the very qualities that have made you feel isolated are actually your deepest connection to the universe itself? These are the revolutionary questions that Whitman's work poses to overthinking mind. The path isn't always easy, but it is always meaningful. Your capacity to see what others miss isn't a mistake or a malfunction. It's a necessary function in the ecosystem of human consciousness. In a world increasingly dominated by artificial intelligence, algorithms, and mechanized thinking, the deeply human capacity to overthink, to perceive nuance, to sit with paradox and mystery becomes not just valuable, but essential. Your mind, with all its spiraling thoughts and heightened perception, is not just thinking about the world, it's participating in the world's becoming. Honor it as such, use it wisely, share its gifts generously, and remain.